Muscle.
The county of Chautauqua is as varied as they come in the state of New York. From rolling hills to lakeside beaches, dense forests to open farmland, brick-covered cities to hidden hamlets. Chautauqua County is home to a wealth of history and landmarks that make this county truly special. The state routes that snake their way through Chautauqua lead residents and visitors alike to these special places. My name is Alex Irwin, and in this special, we will be exploring what I consider Roadside Chautauqua. There is no better way to start our roadside tour of Chautauqua County than to visit the storied Chautauqua Institution. Situated on the western bank of Chautauqua Lake, the institution has stood on this site since 1874, when it was formed by the Methodist bishop John Hale Vinson and Lewis Miller, inventor of the Blade Combine. The institution was started as a teaching camp for Sunday school teachers. In time, it would become a clustered community that hosted academic lectures, religious programs, and fine arts. I'm currently standing in Miller Park, named after the aforementioned co-founder, Lewis Miller. The institution actually had its very first program in this very park, which served as the ground's first amphitheater. Along the shore of the lake, I can see the beautiful Miller Bell Tower. The steamship dock that used to be the original entrance to the assembly used to stand on that site, but with the introduction of automobiles, the new entrance is now on New York State Route 394. Talking about the tower, though, it should be ringing any minute now. The tower rings before the start of every program to alert the groundsgoers of upcoming events. The institution hosts a 9-week season every summer that attracts hundreds of thousands of participants a year. In fact, since its founding in 1874, the institution has been visited by 4 sitting U.S. presidents, including Ulysses S. Grant, Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and Bill Clinton. If you stick around the grounds, you might even be able to hear a speech or program yourself.
I have seen war on land and sea. I have seen blood running from the wounded. I have seen children starving. I have seen the agony of mothers and wives. I hate war.
If lectures aren't your thing, though, the view of Chautauqua Lake from the tower is worth the visit by itself. If you really squint your eyes, though, you may even be able to see our next destination. Welcome to Jamestown, New York, home of the Crescent Wrench, fine furniture, and of course, Lucille Ball. Quite the variation, I might say. Established in 1810, Jamestown is the largest population center in Chautauqua County, sitting just past where the Chautauqua River flows into Chautauqua Lake. The rows of brownstone buildings and brick-layered streets will capture your attention first. The steep hills those streets are laid on come second. As you drive around this small city, you notice a familiar face plastered around on signs and murals, the likeness of Lucille Ball, the star of I Love Lucy. Ball was born in the city of Jamestown in 1911. After moving around in her early years, she returned to Western New York when she was 3 to live with her grandparents in nearby Celeron. After enrolling in acting school, she would eventually move to Hollywood to appear in movies, musicals, and radio dramas. The CBS radio show, My Favorite Husband, would eventually lead to her success, meeting future husband Desi Arnaz during production. When CBS sought to turn this production into a TV series, Lucille Ball and Arnaz were cast as the leads of I Love Lucy. The duo would go on to create Desilu Studios, making Lucille Ball the first woman to lead a Hollywood studio. Her influence is seen clearly through this city. Jamestown is home to the Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz Museum, which goes through the lives of both actors and the production of I Love Lucy. You can learn all about the inner workings of the show and may even be able to catch a screening of the most popular episodes throughout the exhibit.
Hello, friends. I'm your Baideme girl. Are you tired, run down, listless? Do you poop out at parties? Are you unpopular? The answer to all your problems is in this little bottle. Little bottle. Baideme contains vitamins, meats, vegetables, and minerals.
If you're interested in catching a play, just down the road is the Lucille Ball Little Theater, named in her honor. The theater hosts a handful of productions a year. The National Comedy Center is also located in Jamestown, solidifying Jamestown as a center for learning about the art of comedy and performance. If the hustle and bustle of city entertainment becomes overwhelming, just half an hour north is the location of our next destination. A small island situated on Cassadaga Lake is home to Lilydale, a spiritualist community. Founded on the bylaws and beliefs of spiritualism, the community as a whole believes in the existence of two fundamental substances in the world: matter and spirit. As you walk around the close-knit community, you can see a number of mediums available to commune with. The entire community was formed in 1879 as a camp and meeting place for both spiritualists and freethinkers, and is located within an old-growth forest called the Leland Woods. This forest is sacred to the community, containing the Inspiration Stump, a meeting place for seminars and assemblies, in the location of what used to be the Healing Tree. The Healing Tree once stood farther into the woods, but eventually died due to visitors taking its bark as souvenirs. Lilydale has become one of, if not the largest, spiritualist organization, as many went into decline in the 1950s. To learn more about the community and spiritualism as a whole, I recommend taking a visit to the Lilydale Museum, located in the heart of the community. The renovated 1800s schoolhouse holds many exhibitions on both. Once you have been rejuvenated within the grounds of the Dale, our next destination brings us back into the industrialization of Chautauqua County in the 1800s, as well as the education of that county. Fredonia, New York. Home to the State University of New York at Fredonia, Fredonia was founded in 1804 under the name Canada Way. The town would later be renamed to Fredonia, a coupling of the word freedom with a Latin ending. Just 20 years after its founding, the Fredonia Academy would be formed, the first higher education institution in Chautauqua County. The school was originally located in town, where the retirement home and opera house still stand today, and it moved to its current campus in the mid-20th century. Fredonia is home to two important events in the industrialization and capitalization of our country. The first is that it is home to the first ever natural gas well in the United States. Dug out by hand in 1821, it was just a mere 27 feet deep, using hollowed-out logs covered in tar as its pipe. It supplied enough gas to light 2 stores, 2 shops, and a grist mill on the river. This gristmill is now the current fire station in Fredonia. The Fredonia Gas Light Company would eventually form in 1858, becoming America's first natural gas company. A plaque set in stone marks this little nugget of history along West Main Street. In addition to that, Fredonia is home to the United States' first ever Grange. The Grange is a social organization formed after the Civil War to help those within the agricultural community, be it economically or politically. They are the oldest agricultural advocacy group in the United States that's nationwide. The first Grange Hall is still standing in Fredonia at 58 West Main Street, and a historical marker can be found outside the building. This Grange was formed in 1868 by 8 community members. Just 5 years later, the organization would be united under a national Grange in Washington, D.C. So, why is the founding of a Grange so important? They're responsible for a number of lobbying efforts that have benefited both farmers and all Americans alike. They are the reason that the United States Post Office offers free rural mail delivery, and by extension, mail delivery to all Americans. The Grange was responsible for the regulation of train freight rates and funding research for agriculture. They are often an unknown force, especially within urban and suburban folks such as myself. They are monumental in what they have done for this country, however, and it all started right here in Fredonia, in this little brick building. Agriculture is a founding industry in Chautauqua County, and if it's not in the lobbying side of it, it's in the actual farming and growing of agricultural goods. Our next destination knows a thing or two about the charm of a rural town. I now find myself in the middle of Westfield, in a small park, looking for my next destination. In front of me is a statue of our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln. His signature hat is at his side as he extends his hand to a little girl by the name of Grace Baideme. This is not where I intended to be, but I can't help but stop. Before his election, Grace Baideme, at the time only 11 years old, wrote a letter to Abe Lincoln telling him he should grow a beard to increase his popularity. Lincoln replies, making no promises. A year later, Lincoln makes his inaugural tour, stopping in the town of Westfield. As the train stops in the station, he requests to talk to specifically Grace Baideme. And when Grace meets him, he is now sporting a full-grown beard. Lincoln's signature beard was caused by this girl who lived in Westfield. That is simply the joy of exploring roadside history. You never know what odd nugget of history you could stumble upon, even if your goal was entirely different. My goal was in fact entirely different in the town of Westfield. I was not looking for a presidential moment, but in fact the origin of a grape juice giant.
Take the time to taste the Welch's. Take the time to roll it round. Savor all that Concord flavor.
That grape juice giant, Welch's, was incorporated in 1893 when the Welch's Company moved from Vinland, New Jersey to Westfield. Their headquarters sat in this town for around a century before moving to Concord, Massachusetts. Just across the street from this statue sits that headquarter building. The stone facade of the Welch's logo still prominently displayed, despite it being a multi-use office building now. Down the road from here, just a tad north, sits the original Welch's factory, now a designated historic place. It sits in disrepair just across the street from the new modern processing plant. Westfield sits at the center of a massive grape belt spanning from Erie, Pennsylvania to Buffalo, New York. Why does this region produce so many grapes? I decided to travel to the one place on the Lake Erie shoreline that I could reliably get an answer to the plethora of vineyards in this region, the Grape Discovery Center. Located in Westfield, it stores the history of grape growing in Chautauqua County. I had the opportunity to talk to Philip Baideme, president of the Grape Discovery Center, to find out more about this odd piece of Chautauquan identity. Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Baideme.
Okay, it's good to meet you.
How long have the vineyards been in this region?
Oh, they date back to the 1800s, and they really became prominent in the mid-1900s, probably in the 40s, when Welch came along, and, well, he was here before that, but he really made things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so since then, with the unfermented grape juice he was pushing, the business took off. And then about 1970, the grape harvesting machine came about, and that really increased the size of farms and production along this belt.
Mm-hmm. And I know Welch's came along, the mid 1800s. Is there a reason why they came specifically to Lake Erie?
Because Concord grapes can grow quite well here because of the environment and the soils. We're on what used to be part of Lake Erie,
mm-hmm.
and when it receded, it left some good soils, mainly up in this area. But as you head down towards the lake, you get into more of a sandy clay loam, and there the grape vineyards do well, but it's mainly environment. We get the winter conditions thanks to Lake Erie, especially when it freezes. It holds up bud break in the spring, and it allows us to lengthen the season out. Where if you go up on the hill towards Mayville and Cassadaga and that, they started experiencing freezes first part of October, where we won't see them until towards the end of October.
Mm-hmm. So it's really just a combination of all the perfect factors that really make this grape belt, one of the largest out there.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Since it's such a large grape belt, it spans all the way from Erie up to Buffalo. That's affecting a lot of people. There are a lot of people that live, within the grape belt. What does it mean to the local community to have such a natural resource?
Well, it's especially right here and in Northeast Pennsylvania. Those are the two main areas for processing the final product. And the economy is definitely influenced by that. And now with the advent of wineries along the Grape Belt, it brings in a lot of tourists and for wine tastings and buying wine, and which boosts the economy of the local restaurants and other businesses, not only here, but Northeast, Fredonia, and that.
Mm-hmm. So it's really integral to the community, though.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
It wouldn't be the same Chautauqua County without, the Grape Belt on the North Shore.
And when Welch's had their main office here, it was quite the busy place.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
And with grapes, being so important to the region, where would, somebody go to learn more about them? What it means, to Chautauqua County?
You could go to the extension office in Portland, right on Route 20. You can talk to people here at the Discovery Center. They could call me or some other farmers that are on the board to come in and talk to people. And we do that with a large number of bus groups. And there's one of our members is sort of the historian, and he talks to all those bus groups.
And where is the Grape Discovery Center located exactly?
The Grape Discovery Center is located in Westfield, New York, on Route 20, just outside the village to the west.
Thank you so much, Mr. Baideme, for talking to me today.
Oh, you're welcome. Good luck.
After tasting the wine and grape juice Westfield had to offer, it's time to continue the journey along the Lake Erie coastline. The New York State Route 5 follows the Lake Erie shoreline all the way up to Buffalo. The vistas seen along this route are truly beautiful, with rolling waves and dramatic bluffs. Coming from Westfield, you end up driving right past the Barcelona Lighthouse, a small little conical building situated above Barcelona Harbor. It was constructed in 1829. Just a couple years later, it would become the first lighthouse in the world to run on natural gas. These natural gas pipelines led out to a small gas leak by the riverbank almost 2 miles away. The lighthouse would be decommissioned in 1859, but stay lighted years afterwards under private ownership. It is now owned by the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. Driving past Barcelona Lighthouse, my actual destination is just a few miles up the road. Lake Erie State Park is open year-round and is situated just north of the village of Brockton. They have campsites and hiking trails throughout the park, along with the Lake Erie Beach. Those bluffs I was talking about earlier, many of the trails in the park straddle the edges of these bluffs, often close to 50 feet in height. In the best of weather, the sunsets from these vistas look incredible, and I absolutely recommend. As I stand atop one of them, a historical marker at the edge of the bluff is what I came here for. Titled The Shipwrecks of Lake Erie, it stories 5 of the most famous shipwrecks to happen just off the Chautauquan coastline. The most riveting being the story of the New Connecticut. Allow me to read right off this plaque what happened to this schooner. On September 4th, 1833, the schooner New Connecticut capsized in a sudden squall. Although the ship's captain was not on the vessel at the time, his aunt, Mary Appleby, was aboard and was in her cabin when the ship overturned. Assuming she had drowned, the crew abandoned the ship and rowed to safety in the ship's yawl. Mary's cabin filled with water, leaving her trapped and helpless. Lying on its side, the ship drifted in the lake for 3 days before a recovery party arrived to claim her body. When she heard them, she cried for help, but they didn't hear her. The party stuck a long pole into her cabin to probe for her corpse, but she didn't know what to do with it. Unaware that Mary was still alive, the search party left. 2 days later, the ship's captain arrived to tow the vessel to port. When they got the ship turned upright, his aunt emerged suddenly from her cabin, exhausted but unharmed. She later retold her harrowing tale of surviving for 5 days, at times with only a small airspace at the top of her cabin. The only food she had was a cracker and an onion that she caught as it floated past. For similar descriptions on the shipwrecks of Lake Erie, I deeply recommend you visit the state park and read these markers. It's incredibly interesting reading about the perils of sailing on the Great Lakes, and shocking how often ships in the 19th century damaged themselves or ran aground. Our final destination is also situated along Lake Erie, though it's famous for a different type of transportation. The city of Dunkirk finds itself situated directly along the coast of Lake Erie. When Dunkirk came up on my list of places to research for this special, I decided to put my words into practice. For the other locations explored during this special, I found which historical markers I wanted to focus on and went from there. I had researched them thoroughly before deciding what I wanted to focus on in their histories. For Dunkirk, however, I decided to go see if I could find a historical marker not listed on the historical marker database. I would be driving on the road, keeping an eye out for the first snippet of history I could find, and talk about it. Admittedly, it didn't take all that long. There is a massive stone plaque on the side of the road when going north on Main Street. It states that on that site on May 15, 1851, a train arriving from Piermont on the Hudson arrived in Dunkirk, New York, finally connecting the Atlantic seaboard to the Great Lakes via train. This train contained numerous senators, statesman Daniel Webster, and 13th President of the United States, Millard Fillmore. The railroad industry would become a prominent feature of Dunkirk's history for the next century or so, and would eventually become the base of operations for a railroad engineer by the name of Horatio Brooks. When the New York and Erie Railroad pulled its machine shops out of Dunkirk in 1869, Brooks would go on to found Brooks Locomotive Works. This locomotive shop would become one of the best in the world, producing well-made steam engines for railroads all across the country. A Brooks-made locomotive would actually briefly hold the land speed record in 1895, reaching a high speed of 92.3 miles per hour. The company would be bought out in 1901, and locomotive production would eventually stop in the mid-20th century. If the name Brooks sounds familiar to those from the area, that's because the local hospital, Brooks Memorial, is actually named after Horatio Brooks. When Dunkirk was incorporated as a city in 1883, he was elected mayor and served 3 terms. This man was integral to the community and loved it, even operating his company at a loss during a financial panic to keep his workers on the payroll. All of this was learned because I discovered a marker on the side of the road. That's the charm these markers have. They can cause you to learn so much from so little words. This marker, as of the time of recording, is still awaiting publication on the Historical Marker Database. I tasked myself with finding an interesting piece of roadside history in the county of Chautauqua, and I reckon this marker made an excellent end to this Roadside Chautauqua journey. Hello, is this recorder on? I hope you all enjoyed this small podcast about the roadside history of Chautauqua County. I'm currently in Brockton, New York, under the only double arch east of the Mississippi River, when I thought this might be a cool place to sign out the show. When I thought up of Roadside Chautauqua, I never imagined how much fun I would have traveling the county and learning all about the odd tidbits of history this place had to offer. History is a small passion of mine, and learning as much as I could to present it to you all was really enjoyable. If you're curious on roadside historical markers, I really recommend you take a look at the website hmdb.org. They are the historical marker database. They have hundreds of thousands of markers listed on their website, and information found on it helped make this podcast special what it is. I help contribute to the site, and the Dunkirk marker I talked about will be Chautauqua County's 246th logged marker on the database. That means there are 245 others in the county we know about, and many more that we don't. Perhaps you'll be able to find one of those hidden ones and add it to the database yourself. I know I personally will be keeping my eye out on the roadside for more markers to learn about. I hope you all enjoyed Roadside Chautauqua as much as I did making it, and I can't wait to see where the roads will bring us next.